Want to welcome you today. I'm Fred Davis, pastor Mending Fences Cowboy Church in Lebanon, Tennessee. We're located on Highway 109 just south of Gallatin, just past the river going south. We're at the Starstruck Farm, and we meet there on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock. If you're not actively involved in a church, we would invite you to come. I know that you'll enjoy the worship and the fellowship of the people, and you will be blessed as a result. So we invite you to come to be a part of that special time. We have been looking at the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes. That's one that most people very rarely read, or they use it in sermons, but the meanings that are found in the book of Ecclesiastes are amazing. This is written by Solomon. Solomon was considered to be one of the wisest men that ever lived. He was considered to be one of the wealthiest men that ever lived. He set out to discover the purpose of life. He starts out in chapter 1 simply saying in verse 2, "Everything is meaningless," says the teacher. The teacher is Solomon. Completely meaningless. Then he proceeds to give support to that statement. And he talks about the futility of wisdom, the futility of pleasure, the wise and the foolish. And in the third chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes, he points out a very simple principle. Here it is. There is a time for everything. So, he deals with several issues in our lives, and it is very true. And so, he then looks at a lot of the different elements of life, and as we began in verse 16 of chapter 3, we're going to pick up on another aspect of life that Solomon points out that is nothing but corruption. Here it is. I also noticed that under the sun there is evil in the courtroom, in the judges' chambers, in the courts that take place. And you may find yourself in court for a variety of reasons, but remember, there is evil in the courthouse, and it is very, very true. There are people of great influence, people of a lot of money that will always get out with a lighter sentence than someone who has no influence in the community. So the courts are filled with evil. Yes, even the courts of law are corrupt. Remember that. Keep it in mind when you have to go to court that you're faced with evil. It is there. The honest truth will rarely, if ever, be presented. Verse 17, I said to myself, in due season, God will judge everyone, both good and bad, for all their deeds. So if you go to court, you're misrepresented. Think of the people that have been on death row for years that later has been proven they were innocent. And they get out. Well, what does he say? The courts may disappropriate the judgment that is cast down or presented to a person. But one day, the great King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the great Judge of all, will judge everything and his judgment is perfect. It's not based on influence. It's not based upon how wealthy you are or who you know. This judgment will be perfect and right, and everything will be made perfect in his sight. So he is saying, one day all judgment will be made right. I also thought about the human condition. Now keep in mind, he's talking about the meaning of life. How God proves to people that they are like animals. For people and animals share the same fate. They both breathe, and both must die. We in America are very fond of our pets. We have them in our homes, we have them on our property, and we're very fond of our pets. But everybody knows those animals that breathe and eat one day will die. That's the characteristic that human beings share with animals, that we too are going to die. And both must die. Both humans and animals will be brought to the same end. So people have no real advantage over the animals. How meaningless. Both go to the same place. They came from dust and they will return to dust. It's so true. Human beings, all of us have an appointed time that we are going to die. The sentence of death is passed upon all men. Every person will come to the same outcome as the animals. We were born from the dust of the earth, and when we die, we will go back to the dust of the earth. Now, there are people and nations that do everything they can to preserve bodies of those who have passed away. They are prepared, they're put in tombs, they're put in a lot of different places. You can go there and see the decayed bodies. But I have news for you. They return to the dust. All of us does. It is the sentence that is passed upon all men. Verse 21, for who can prove that the human spirit goes up and the spirit of animals goes down to the earth? Who can prove that? So I saw that there is nothing better for people than to be happy with their work. That is our lot in life. Now, if you just read that by itself, we can miss the meaning of life. God has created us in his own image, that we might have a personal relationship with the God who created us. So he's telling us there's nothing better than for people than to be happy in their work. From a physical standpoint, that is true. But from a spiritual concept, we are to be a spiritual person. Now, that spiritual side of us does not die. Yes, the body dies. We bury it, it returns to the dust of the earth. But once we are born, We are in eternal existence. Whether you know Christ or don't know him, you will never cease to exist. Do you see that? So he's saying the ultimate outcome for a person is to be happy in their work. People say, if you find something you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. Meaning, you will enjoy what you're doing. Then he goes on to say that that is our lot in life. No one can bring us back to see what happens after we die. Nobody except Jesus has come back from the dead under their own power. When we die, we cannot come back to life and see the impact that we made. So as long as there's breath in our body, as long as we are alive, we should do our very best to fulfill the purposes God has for us in our living. So you see, we have to trust God. We have to depend upon him because we do not have the ability to return to life. So what is going on here? Solomon, again, is searching for the purpose of life. Do you see that? We all, at some point in our life, have that same adventure. We're looking for the purpose of life. And that is what he's saying. He says there's corruption in the courts. We all have the sentence of death that's been cast upon us. It's just like the animals. We live, we breathe, and we die. That is true for animals. That's true for us as individuals. So he is drawing this conclusion. There is nothing better for people than to be happy in their work. That is where we need to be. But also, we should be building a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That relationship will go on for eternity. I hope that you'll think about these things, that you'll continue to read the book of Ecclesiastes, and as we continue tomorrow, we're going to look at chapter number 4. Keep in mind, Solomon is looking for the purpose of life. Thank you for being with us today.